Welcome to the Tech Tables podcast, live at Infotech Live in New Orleans.
All right.
Super excited to have the both of you here.
Great.
Let's kick off with some short intros.
I'm Mark. I work at Infotech. I'm a managing partner for the education business and support universities, colleges, and K-12 literally around the world.
And a fun fact that I already know about you, but is it electric guitar?
It is an electric guitar. That's
Okay.
my fun fact, yes.
Yeah. And so you play.
I never said I play well, but I do play.
Okay.
And I enjoy it. It's fun for me. I don't know about others.
I love that. Carlos?
Carlos Thomas, executive counselor with Infotech, starting my 5th year. Yeah.
And where were you before this?
I was actually selling barbecue for a living before I started with Infotech. I retired as a professor and administrator at university level after 21 years and decided I wanted to cook barbecue for a living. And someone continued to badger me about coming to work at Infotech. And I finally bought into it, and it's the best job I've ever had in my life.
More than the barbecue.
That's a bucket list item, so you can't really compare the two. But to be working for somebody else, yeah, this is the top of the line for me. Absolutely.
I love it. And I know we're short on time, but I do got to ask, what was the operation like? Like, how big of a cooker did you have?
So yeah, I could cook 1,600 pounds of meat at a time, double barrel. It's a family-owned business in Sikeston, Missouri called Heartland Cookers. We bought it and had it shipped down. They brought it on in, and we would roll from 4:30 in the morning. I'm going on and on. But we would cook the briskets and the pork shoulders, the ribs, and the chicken. Yep, lots of fun.
So the reason why this is coming top of mind is if you're in the state of Texas and they will watch this later, I know several CIOs who they've got smokers,
Sure.
they got an operation going on. And
Yeah,
so
it's
I know they're going
therapy.
to appreciate that.
Yeah, it's therapy, man.
And I'm getting hungry.
I owe you a few ribs for over the last 5 years. I keep promising I'll bring, but I'm going to bring it eventually. So maybe in March when you're here.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
I love that. Okay, so topic, we were talking about this offline. What are CIOs excited about in higher ed? I said I really liked that because a lot of times CIOs talk about what's not working, here are the problems, here are the challenges, and that's great. And also, what are the opportunities, right? How can we have a optimistic and positive mindset? And normally I have a CIO or a C-level executive on here on the podcast, and this is actually one of the rare opportunities because I think you two both have extraordinary insights from traveling around the country that we can, I don't want to say unpack because we don't have enough time to maybe unpack, but maybe just give a taste, maybe a little barbecue taste.
But we also were CIOs in higher education, so that being able to walk the walk and talk similarly has been important for us.
So the both of you can empathize, which is really great.
Absolutely.
We've walked a mile in their shoes.
And we've got the battle scars.
And the battle scars.
And the lack of hair.
And the lack of hair.
So Mark, we'll kick off with you. What came top of mind for you when you said this is a topic that you would love? What do you think CIOs are excited about in higher ed today?
Yeah, it gets complicated, but if you think historically in higher ed, the value of IT is not perceived as being as high as the value of IT in almost any other industry. And it's not just higher ed. Higher ed and K-12, IT has just not had the same amount of respect. The Rodney Dangerfield problem, I get no respect. But a lot of IT organizations in the education space haven't been getting the kind of respect that their peers get in other industries. What we're seeing with the implementation of AI, and particularly with Agentic AI, is the realization that AI will change pedagogy. So the fundamental way in which we teach and which we learn is being impacted by technology. So the value of technology is being recognized by the institutions as being incredibly important, and it's changing everything. It's moving everybody to teach at a higher level of abstraction. It's moving us up Bloom's taxonomy to a higher order of abstraction, forcing teaching to change. And so the role of IT is becoming more important. Folks around the campus are turning to the CIO and going, we can't keep up with all this stuff. We don't understand what's going on with generative AI. We don't get agentic AI, but you're the technology person. You understand the art of the possible. How do we make this happen? And so the role of the CIO is shifting from sometimes a peer, sometimes an order taker, to a leader, someone who's actually leading the organization through a period of vast technological change, which is changing the fundamental core of what universities are all about, which is teaching, learning, and research. It's getting exciting for CIOs.
It is. So a topic related that I'm hearing across verticals would be the role of the CIO. So Carlos, I would love to hear from you in the higher education space. What do you think the role of both now and then let's take maybe 5 or 10 years, what does that role look like?
To Mark's point about education in general being a laggard in adopting technology and innovation associated with technology, when you look at the role of the CIO for the future in education, that person is really a technology-informed COO, right? They have to know all the aspects of the education experience on the operations side as well as the teaching and learning side. And so what I'm excited about is, again, the elevation of the role of the CIO beyond just keeping the lights on, keeping the internet up, to someone who's actually driving innovation and adoption across all aspects of education. And that's it.
We're becoming technology-first enterprises.
We absolutely are.
Yeah.
We absolutely are. And Mark, I think you're going to touch on this also, but from my perspective, from my experience in the field, right, we service institutions literally around the world, right? So I've got clients in the UK, in South Africa, in North America, and it's been interesting to, one, take a zoom out and see what's going on from a demographic perspective as far as education goes, and to see how demographic shifts are impacting different parts of the world. So I'll give you an example. In the US, we have the proverbial enrollment cliff that really starts to manifest this fall, right? So 2008, 2009, during the Great Recession, people stopped having children. We don't have as many 18-year-olds each year as we did 5, 10 years ago. And as a result, there won't be enough butts and seats to actually meet all the enrollment needs for all the universities. And so that kind of put a crisis on universities and colleges to make strategic decisions, right? How do you actually maintain the revenue source and keep things going? And so we've seen consolidation of colleges. We've also seen colleges utilize technology more to optimize their operations. I'll give you an example. Lincoln Technical University or School, they are a publicly traded entity that we service based in New Jersey, but they have campuses all over the country. They actually have built an optimization program to help with financial aid packaging, to optimize the amount of financial aid that a student can get without increasing their debt burden, right? That's important because they're publicly traded, they are a private entity, and they're going to be scrutinized by the Fed, so they have to be able to demonstrate due diligence. That's one of the ways that they can actually distinguish themselves in the marketplace. Let's pivot to South Africa, that also has a demographic challenge, but it's quite opposite to the US. They have annually about 100,000 students that cannot enroll, that won't enroll in colleges and universities, and so they are looking at technologies like AI and optimization programs to actually maximize their operations for efficiency, to get as many students as they possibly can service, as well as to improve course and service delivery. So it's interesting to see how different parts of the world utilizing technology for basically existence. Yeah.
And so what we're seeing is this notion of we're becoming, in the education space, both K-12 and higher ed, we're becoming technology-first enterprises. And so you start to see the emergence of multiple C-suite roles. So Western University has a chief AI officer, but they also have a chief data officer and a CIO and a CTO, and there's multiple roles because there's so much technology that's part and parcel of the organization that you need to have multiple C-suite roles. Sometimes that makes CIOs uncomfortable, but one of the examples we're seeing, and this is something we've seen a couple cases of this in the education space, where the CIO gets promoted into the chief operating officer role, right? When the CIO becomes the chief operating officer, some people go, it doesn't make sense. But the reality is the only person who sees how everything works, how everything connects in the institution, whether it's HR, whether it's finance, whether it's pedagogy, whether it's the research side of the institution, and alumni, it's the CIO that's delivering systems there. It's the CIO that understands how it all works together. And so we're seeing this notion of the CIO becoming the chief operating officer. It's an evolution of the role, a natural evolution.
Absolutely.
Given if you're a technology-first enterprise, it makes sense for the guy who understands, or the girl who understands technology, to start running the organization.
Yeah, no, this is really great. We heard this earlier this morning. Tom had said, one, CIO is the hardest job. And then two,
Absolutely.
technology first organizations or enterprises, every organization or enterprise needs to become, whether you're mowing grass or whatever, needs to become first a technology organization.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because now you think about the role of the CIO and how far up could they go in higher education? Because it would be tough to hire, I don't know if it's a chancellor or for some organizations, a CEO, if you don't have any understanding of technology, because it's everywhere, it's embedded everywhere.
It's ubiquitous.
And similarly, I think it's important to understand that if you are a CIO or aspiring to become a CIO, your skill sets have to transcend just technology. You have to understand human dynamics, organization, small group behavior, and political landscape. That's very important. Yeah. Hey, I'm a former egghead. I can speak to the higher ed environment. We have politics for politics, okay? So you've never been in a place more politically charged than a faculty senate meeting or something to that effect. You got to understand how to navigate that and overcome it, or to utilize it to your advantage if you are a technology leader in higher education, because that's the nature of the environment, right? And those that have those capabilities can very often navigate in and out of certain circles to get influence and to get things done for the organization. So that really is a key element of development, skill development for technology leaders.
Universities are managed, this is a quote from a provost I used to work for.
Okay.
Universities are managed by a vast array of interwoven matrices. He was an economist. And it sounds awfully highfalutin, but the reality is that's how universities work. Right?
Absolutely.
It's a matrix of decisions, and everybody needs to be engaged in the conversation, which means you need to be a diplomat to get anything done. And I think it's the quote from Henry Kissinger that really resonates. He longed for the simplicity of the Middle East after going to work for Harvard. Right?
Mark, wow. Mark, I'd add to the diplomat skill set to also look at some old Billy Graham or Martin Luther King sermons, because you also have to be a huge evangelist for what it is that you do.
Oh, yeah.
You have to know how to touch people where they are and to invoke a response that's going to get them to believe that what you're doing is valid and should be bought into. That's a massive undertaking for some folks who are in technology, but if you can master those skills, you can get a lot of stuff done.
I have an academic dream.
Wow.
But no, I think there's actually a lot. There's actually a lot to be learned there.
Yeah.
Because think about the jobs: so technology, politics, being able to make the business case.
Yeah.
When budgets, a huge theme, right? Everyone's budget is getting slashed.
Yeah.
I think higher ed's probably in the toughest position.
We're seeing the Edu-pocalypse, right? So we're seeing a number of factors coming together. Tom talked about the uncertainty of the world, whereas IT is the only place where we are seeing certainty right now. The uncertainty translates in a big way into universities, right? We're seeing the DOGE efficiency measures. We're seeing changes to the Department of Education. We're seeing changes to cultural attitudes towards higher education. One of which is maybe universities aren't so useful. Maybe an education isn't as important because the return on investment for an education isn't there. So we're seeing scrutiny at a cultural level that we've never seen before, right? We're seeing AI changing everything that we do, right? Teaching, learning, research, administration, all the core aspects are changing within an institution by AI, around AI. Everything's changing at once. The political environment, the technical environment, throughout the institution, and the students' attitudes are changing as well. So we need to rethink how we run our institutions. And this is a non-trivial problem. And this is where leaders emerge, the diplomats emerge, the ones that can provide a convincing vision of the future and then act on it.
I'll give you an example that Mark alluded to around value proposition that universities and colleges are being tasked with presenting. We had a conversation a few weeks ago with the CIO of a system in the tri-state area of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. He told us that the potential students that are coming to their system schools are asking, what AI skills will I be able to acquire during my time here? And if they can't actually give them a cogent response, they are going to schools in Connecticut and New Jersey and not thinking about schools in the New York area. That's real. That is tangible. And kudos to the students for showing agency and saying we want to make sure that the investment we're putting in, because Although many of them are able to get some degree of grant funding, they still have to take out loans. How can I pay this back? That's really important for every institution to understand that value proposition has to be at the fore.
And I think part of that is we're seeing this notion of measuring AI use by number of AI tokens consumed.
Yeah.
And in the education space, according to OpenAI, 2/3 to 3/4 of all AI tokens are being used in education, right? And most of those are students, right? So there's going to be a tsunami, I used this language earlier, but a tsunami of AI immersed students coming your way. And so it's not just the education space that's changing, but they're going to influence all of the folks that are hiring them. And they're going to come work for the companies that are AI fluent. They're going to ignore the ones that aren't. So we need to prepare not only our workforce, but we need to prepare our companies that are hiring, our economy, for this influx of AI-immersed students.
Right now, there are 6 generations in the workforce right now, but that's going to change as
we cover at least 5 of them,
think
right?
so.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
as some of the older folks start to retire, younger folks will come in, and I'm thinking right now, you said this tsunami of, and like I'm thinking about my 7-year-old who now asks me everything is, Dad, can you go to ChatGPT?
Yeah.
I grew up and I had AOL was just a thing, and I had a gateway, this huge gateway computer with a.
I don't miss that.
No, neither do I. And you gentlemen are older than me.
So I'm not old, I'm immortal.
Yeah.
I'm old.
But Google did not exist. YouTube did not exist. ChatGPT didn't exist. The iPhone didn't come out till I graduated high school. And so now you have all this stuff and all these students. And like what you said, I think the word or phrase is reimagining what this is going to look like.
Yeah. At the sounding like I'm proselytizing and preaching, the old paradigm of education is quickly dissipating. It's gone. It's going away. And so the educators that we have, K-12, they have to be malleable and open to new forms, new ways to teach and to assess learning, teaching and learning. Again, Mark talks about going up Bloom's taxonomy, and they have to be trained. Likewise, in higher education, the notion of being the sage on the stage, although I love that method of teaching, in many ways it's passé. It's not completely obsolete, but in many ways it's passé because the students have access to so much information through the internet, through other tools that can actually, in many ways, supplement what's going on in the classroom. That being the case, decision makers have to really think hard about what education looks like in the future and be open to change. And here's something that I experienced firsthand working in the industry. So during my graduate work and my doctoral studies in information systems and data science, I actually supported myself and my family by teaching at online universities and for-profit universities. And at the same time, I'm going to a traditional brick and mortar school, and I'm listening to administrators and professors talk about really degrading that sort of service delivery until they realized that their continuing ed dollars were going to other for-profit institutions, and they saw what they were missing out on. We don't have to sit there and wait to see what we're missing out on from teaching and learning. We can go ahead and engage in the practice, learn the skills, learn the tools, and incorporate them in the classroom. It's just the reality. I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old, he'll be 19 this Saturday. They run loops around me when it comes to technology because they are tech natives. I had a Commodore 64 as my first computer in 1984. So it's not even a comparison, man. These kids are so far advanced, and we want to be relevant to them in the classroom.
So my last question I'm just curious about is, what's a roundtable or a podcast topic that you would love to hear about, learn about right now, or participate in? Carlos, we can kick off with you and then we'll finish.
Sure.
But
Coming, piggybacking on what I just said, I'd love a podcast that was informed by students and them talking about what they would like to see in the classroom or what they are utilizing in the classroom as it pertains to AI and next generation tools.
Yeah, I'd like to see a podcast about how we can effectively think about Imagine AI is like letting 1,000 flowers bloom on a campus, right? So we've got a lot of people doing a lot of different things, and we talk about responsible AI being that picket fence, that white picket fence around all those flowers that are blooming. But is that practical? And I'd like to see a podcast that talks about how you really encourage the use of AI while concurrently managing a responsible use of it within the context of the mission of the university. Because I suspect it's starting to change the mission of the institution. We used to exist, universities used to exist because we managed a scarce resource, which was knowledge. When knowledge becomes a commodity, it's no longer scarce. How does that change the institution? What is our role in the value chain in the economy? I think AI is changing the fundamental purpose of institutions.
I love that. With that, thank you for coming on the Tech Tables podcast at Infotech Live in New Orleans. Appreciate you both.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
We'll do this anytime.